All right, here we go. Number 3.
Hey, everybody, thanks for joining. It's Nick here from Roofer and with Corey Combs, South Shore Roofing. We have our part 3 of crafting a proposal that crushes your competition, Corey. I'm really excited for today. Got a bit of a different backdrop. I am in Boston today. I went to watch one of my favorite sports teams disappoint me again. So it was a disappointing trip, but it's been great, man. How's things with you?
Things are good. Looking forward to getting this wrapped up, and then we're headed to RoofCon next week. So I get to network with some folks that I interact with a lot on social media, and I get to meet some people that I've talked to for years and have never met. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. And you're doing a breakout session, is that right?
I'm doing a breakout session with Process Pete, and then I'm also doing the 8-figure CEO panel on Saturday.
That's fantastic. Well, that's going to be a blast, everyone. If RoofCon is Thursday to Saturday in Orlando, so if you haven't got tickets yet, go get tickets. You're going to see a lot of great tech, great products, great speakers, and I always like RoofCon. It's one of the more, I feel, contractor-centric trade shows where you're actually, as a contractor, you could learn a lot while you're there.
I think so. And I looked at what they have, and they've got some pretty good breakout sessions and some really good instructors. And so, yeah, I think it's really evolved into a pretty good, convention for roofers.
For sure. And excited to have you up there. But this is part 3, Corey. Well, the first two, why don't we do a quick little recap of what we learned in the first 2, and then we can go on to today's part 3, the final installment.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Part 1, we talked a lot about the intake process. We talked about the pre-call and what that process needs to look like so that you set your sales team up for success at the inspection. And then we talked about the inspection. I have these, I call them 7 game-changing questions on the inspection side. And it's more about learning how to ask the right questions when you're dealing with your prospect so that you can set yourself up to create a presentation, which was number 2. The second part of this series was actually how to create a presentation. Like, what do you need to do? What's the framework? What's the structure of creating a really good presentation? And the presentation, meaning like what you're going to do when you're sitting down at the kitchen table with your prospects on how to present not only your offer, but also present your company and what your value is in terms of why they would use you over the other companies that they may have spoken to, and how to actually do that. And today we're going to talk about the proposal. So what that proposal, so if you use Roofer or something like that, hopefully you use Roofer to create a proposal that will follow all of the process that we talked about early on and really kind of bring it home in a cohesive manner in order to close your prospect. So it's really from a sales perspective that we're looking at this, not necessarily from a technical perspective. And just to give you a little bit of an idea on why I know this is so important, not kidding you, this week I've spoken to probably at least 10 other roofing contractors. And every single one of them either did not have this process in place at all. They have absolutely nothing. They have like an estimate that they leave or they send or whatever. Or their proposal, one of them was using another proposal creating tool. And he showed me his proposal, and literally the proposal was just the manufacturer's stuff, right? Like it's like, oh, we do Owens Corning or whatever, and here's the system that we put on with Owens Corning. It's like, okay, great. That doesn't really move the needle for most buyers.
No,
it just doesn't, right? Because if you go in there and you're with a bunch of other Owens Corning contractors, you're all showing the same thing. at that point, you've sort of leveled the playing field, and then all they have to do is look, because they think everything's equal, then they just look at price.
Yeah.
So the idea here is and the reason I say crafting a proposal that crushes your competition is because I'm gonna show them a proposal and a method of presenting that proposal that disqualifies anybody else that they've spoken to and sets you so far apart that you look like a gem.
And that's the big thing. We were talking about that last week and how that makes a huge difference. And then even it's funny that you were talking to people this week about it. I was talking to somebody about it, and we'd had our own masterclass on building our templates with our implementation team. And we had the conversation about exactly what we're doing in this 3-part series. Pete and I were brought up you and how important it is to disqualify the competition, not by words, not by anything else, but by actions. What are you doing differently than the rest, and how can you shine apart? Because you're completely correct. Once it gets down to just a manufacturer and it's just a basic presentation, it's going to go down to price. And that's actually why we talked about it at the beginning of this series. That's why roofers started creating the proposal software, because we had the marketplace and we were losing jobs to fly-by-nighters all the time because we couldn't have that customer take home that value with them. They could hear it from us and then they'd have to discuss it with somebody else, and they can't say they were not nearly as passionate. So really excited to see how you and your team crush that competition by just showing how you're different.
Yeah, I want to demonstrate something really quickly before I jump into this proposal. I want to just demonstrate something really quickly in a way people can understand. One of the roofing company owners I was talking to, he was talking to a sales coach, a couple weeks ago, and that sales coach told him that he needs to be the first person in the door. He needs to be the first person to present whatever the proposal, and he needs to be able to close the sale and sell over the competition. Here's the problem with that. Okay. You're not always going to, in my experience, which I've got a lot of experience selling home services. In my experience, I've maybe once or twice in the last 15 years had somebody sell a job out from under me. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I haven't had anybody sell a job out from under me is because some of the things that I did as a salesperson, I do now on a company level. And if I like, let's take our intake for an example. So setting ourselves apart is not just about crafting a better proposal. That's not what it's about. It's about doing things differently than other companies do. And so, for an example, when we do our intake process, our admin, she asks the questions, she sets them up, and then she lets them know next steps. When she lets them know next steps, she says, okay, what we're going to do next is we're going to send you out a couple of links to some videos. One of them is to introduce you to the rep you're going to be dealing with. The other one is an introduction to the owner, so you know whose company you're dealing with. And then the third one's going to be just some helpful hints on what we've seen with other customers figuring out how to buy some of these projects, so you're a little better prepared. And when we do that, what we've done is, and I used to do this as a sales rep, as soon as I got a lead, I would call the homeowner and introduce myself, let them know I was coming out. If they have any questions in the interim, I'm really looking forward to meeting them. And why that's such a big deal is because we as human beings have these like social contracts where you can develop a little bit of loyalty pretty easily. Mm-hmm. So by just reaching out to them and saying, hey, this is who I am. I'm really looking forward to meeting you. And then, hey, this is the owner. Really appreciate you having us out. You're building that little bit of loyalty. And so those homeowners want to see what you have to say. The likelihood of somebody selling a job out from under you, if you do that, is much greater than if you don't. If you don't do anything, they have no connection to you. They don't care that, whatever. maybe it's much easier for somebody to sell a job out for you. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, you have to use this. You have to use this whole process. You can't just take one little piece and be like, oh, this doesn't work. It's really taking all of these little things, putting them together in a process that really makes a big difference. So I just wanted to clarify that.
That is a big point too, because I know from talking with roofers a lot daily and kind of hearing what they're loving. A lot of people do pick and choose, like takes parts apart from like a training or something that they read, and they kind of make their own kind of Frankenstein from it. And for the most part, yeah, that works with a lot of things. But
because they had nothing in place.
Exactly. But for something like this is such a like I've been calling it foolproof since the beginning, because it's such a well constructed sales process where you are making sure from intake to getting that proposal signed and asking those test close questions and everything else. Like, it makes a huge difference. So following these steps, creating a proposal like this is going to, quote unquote, help you crush that competition.
Yeah. And I'm going to show the proposal. And by the way, anybody watching, yes, this is in my portal in Roofer. No, Nick cannot give it to you.
I've had that several times already from the first two parts. They're like, hey, can you send me that stuff? I was like, I can't. It's
sorry. But the good news is I can help you. Reach out to me if you want me to help you, build out your proposal. I will absolutely help you. But I'm also gonna talk about those trial close questions. I'm gonna let you know how we use those trial close questions, and at the end, I'm gonna show you how we use the estimate to take away any questions, and then how we ask for the business. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what we're gonna walk through today. All right.
Excellent.
So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen and pull up this proposal. Okay, here we go.
Rock and roll.
All righty. So this is a cover page. Generally speaking, we put the homeowner's property there so they can see that it's their property. But just like the structure of anything that we talk about, we always want to set the stage for really what we're going to cover with the homeowner. So when we walk into the home, this is a meeting that we've specifically set up with the homeowner to go through their estimate with them. And the way that we set this up is we tell the homeowner, say, listen, this is a big buying decision. We're a retail company, which, by the way, I want to also highlight, if you are a restoration contractor, we've been talking a lot about this. If you have an inspection set up with a homeowner, you get up on the roof, you find damage, it's really good for you to be able to go out in your truck, create this proposal, even if you do not give them a price, for you to still do this process with them, talk about what you're going to cover, what they need to look for in somebody that they're going to do business with, who you are as a company, and then talking to them about next steps, and then giving them a work scope and a proposal so that you are miles ahead away from everybody else that's knocking on their door.
Yeah.
And you're going to really stand apart. They're going to have a nice leave behind, and they're going to compare you to anybody else that comes to the door. And I guarantee you your customer retention is going to be way higher while you work through the claims process. So I just want people to understand, this is not just for a retail model. This will work really well for a storm model as well.
We touched on that last week too. And I think it's super important to kind of, if anybody out is watching this now or later thinking, well, yeah, it is a retail, and listening to what Corey said and even debating it. No, this is actually, in my opinion, as a retail background sales rep, this is actually something that would completely separate yourself, obviously in retail, but even more so in restoration, because restoration, everyone's just got contracts in front of them with proposals that look like a different language, because Exactly is very busy. This is going to help you win jobs and win relationships. And you won't have to have one of those Facebook posts a couple months down the line where like the customer is going to already sign with me, but they're going with somebody who's going to pay their deductible. They're not going to want to leave when you provide them something like this.
Yeah, 1,000,000%, right? And so whether the next steps is the contingency or whatever the next steps are, that is really what you want to. That's really what you want to focus on. Is, how do I get them to the next steps with me? How do I foster loyalty? And how do I set myself apart? And so this presentation is going to do that. And last week, and I'll stop talking about last week, but visual presentations, when you have things like this where people can tie back what you're telling them and they have a reference with corresponding slides with the information that you're trying to compare to them. So this visual, so when you hit them with the visual and the audio, it is so much more impactful. It drives more credibility to them because now they're seeing it and they're hearing it, and you have a leave behind. So there's this, this tactile proposal, or if you email it to them, whatever, it definitely makes a huge impact. So I'm gonna leave it at that. So my reps go into the house, we sit down, and I'm just gonna kind of role play like I'm going through this with a customer so you can see how we use this proposal in our sales presentation. So Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I really appreciate you sitting down with me today. We talked about what's important to you guys on what you want to see happen with this project. And we also talked about some of the things, some of the fears and some of the issues that you want to make sure are addressed. So I appreciate you sitting down with me. We're going to go through just a few of these quick things today. So this is going to be really quick, and then we'll get into your estimate. And that way, hopefully you guys will have all the information you need to make a good decision on the contractor that you're going to hire. I mean, look, we both know you're going to spend a lot of money on this project here. And my job here is I just want to be like I said when we met the first time, I just want to be your trusted advisor here, whatever that looks like. So I want to make sure you have all the information. We can talk about what next steps look like when we're done, and then you guys can figure out where you want to go from there. So the first thing we're going to look at today, we did a full inspection on your roof. We're going to go through your roof inspection. I'm going to show you the pictures of what we found and then what our recommendations are based on what we found. We're going to talk a little bit about our customers over the years have told us things that they wish they would have known about choosing a contractor. So we've decided to put a few of those things in this proposal so that you can maybe, have the benefit of their past knowledge. We're going to tell you a little bit about who we are as a company, and then we'll talk about what next steps look like, if any. So our inspection process, we inspect your roof, we grade your roof, and then we recommend whatever the issue is. When we were up there, you weren't sure if you needed a repair or a replacement. So how we grade roofs is we really look at really the condition. What's going on with the roof? Is there any damage? Is there any signs of leaking? Do any of your flashings, are they rusted? All of those things. So we look at all of those things, and then we make a determination if it's repairable or if it's not. Some of the things that we want to make sure we look for is cracked shingles, torn shingles. Does the shingle have missing granulation? Can we see the mat? Are they really just not pliable anymore, so they're super brittle? Do we see any loose material around chimneys or any of your vent pipes or anything like that? Has there been excessive granular loss in the gutters? Things like that. So we make sure we take a look at them. And then at this point, my team pulls up their company cam photos, and we do 5 to 6 photos that go through the health of the shingle, so the granulation, any rusty nails, anything that we find that will demonstrate that we looked at what we just talked about with the homeowner in terms of how we grade roofs and what we're looking at. And so after we show them their roof inspection photos, we say to them, so based on what I've shown you, can we agree that it's time for a replacement based on the pictures you saw? And we get them to agree to whatever our proposed solution is. The reason we do that is we make sure that if you get to the closing table and you allow them to, you leave that door open and you allow them to say, well, we're still not really sure if we want to go the repair route or the replacement route, and you don't have a repair estimate with your replacement estimate, you're dead in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that we're getting them to agree with whatever our proposed solution is. I mean, look, if it's a repair, if it can be repaired, we'll put a repair in there. But we get them to agree to whatever the proposed solution is so we can get that objection out of the way right then and there. Now, we've gone through the technical stuff. We've gotten them to agree it's time for a replacement. And then we get into, and we have this slide here, and we just ask them, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, have you ever had a bad experience with a contractor? And we let them talk about that. We let them go through any experiences that they've had, good, bad, or indifferent. If they say that they've had a bad experience, we ask them to talk about that with us. What happened? What do you wish you would have known prior to hiring that contractor, et cetera? And if they say, well, no, we've never hired a contractor before, and you say, okay, understood. What would you think would be some key things for you to look at when you're interviewing and hire a contractor? And we have that conversation with them before we get into our pitch. And we do that for a few different reasons. One of them is to make sure that we can give them the information that they want when they bring up whatever the issue is, or whatever their perceived issue is, or whatever they think would be an issue. We want to be able to talk to them about those things that they've told us, instead of just spitting irrelevant things out to them that they really didn't bring up to us. So this is a really key slide right here for our team. So then what we do.
Sorry, I just want to bring up one thing here. This is such an important slide because what you're doing is obviously solving for their pains. But what's really big is tying it back to the beginning of the call when you're talking about a contractor that is just spewing knowledge that a customer doesn't know. Sure, she'll be like, or he'll be like, oh, good, this guy knows about shingles. But how is it helping me? What's the difference between you and Joe Schmo, who both know knowledge of shingles, but one has a different price? This right here, that slide, that conversation is what's going to capture that interest and pull you in. Yeah.
And then we do something, we say, okay, great. And we have that conversation with them. And then we move into, look, this, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, these are 7 things that our clients over the years have told us that they think are important for them to take a look at before they hire and while they're interviewing a contractor. And this is the part where we talk about disqualifying the competition, crushing the competition. And these can be different. These are going to be different for each roofing company. Because if you try to use these 7 keys right here, you might not have over 150 reviews. You might not have thousands of jobs completed, right? So you can't just pull this and say, oh, I'm going to use these. We have to figure out what your value propositions are and craft the presentation to make sure that it meets what your value selling propositions are. So we talk about, detailed inspection reports. We talk about reviews. We talk about thousands of jobs with a long track record. We talk about certified, licensed, and insured. We had a long conversation about the certified, licensed, and insured. We talk a lot about that, but that's later on in the presentation. Then we talk to them like, you need to look at manufacturer certifications. You need to look at the materials, the high quality materials, and then the high quality installers. And the high quality installers part is like, who's going to be on their roof? And we talk a lot about that. And then we say, look, one of the big key things that our summary that our customers have said is like, they only got one chance to hire the right contractor. And so they just wish they would have been a little bit more diligent in their research so that they didn't become one of those customers that had a bad experience. So then we asked them, based on what we just talked about, what would you think would be some of the key points that you'd want to look at when you choose your contractor, right? Now, what we're doing here is we're just trying to get them to reinforce basically all the stuff that we just said and plant that into their brain, right? Man, this is missing one critical slide. I don't know how we missed this, but so right here, after this one, we have an industry slide, right? And the industry slide basically talks about the failure rate of contracting companies. It talks about contractors have the highest rates of consumer complaints based on like every metric ever, right? Some restaurants is number one, contractors is number two. And we talk a lot about the industry. And the reason we talk about the industry is because, like, look, there's a lot of bad contractors out there, right? And then we talk about us. And we talk about, we have well over, 1,000 projects completed. We have 415 5-star reviews, 28 years experience. We talk a little bit, we ask them, hey, did you get a chance to read through of any of our reviews? What stuck out, right? And now we're getting that confirmation, that social proof confirmation. We talk about the team. We talk about who's in place to make sure that their job goes well and why that's super important. And did any of the other companies talk to them about what happens, what the process is, who are the people in place if there's a problem? Because it is construction, things happen. Did they talk about what they do and who is going to handle the problem? Yeah. That's another way we discredit other companies. We talk about licensing and insurance. We have a long conversation. We have a really good script around talking about insurance that is usually kind of like the mic drop, right? And so once we do that, once we get done with the insurance stuff, okay, notice on here, we haven't talked anything about product. Nothing.
There's a great line from John DeRosa is sell yourself before you sell that product. You want them to have buy-in on you before they buy in on the product. This is fantastic.
Yeah. So what we got to do here now is we've got to set up our close. And the way that we set up our close is we do the trial close. And so we have 6 trial closing questions that we ask based on this information, right? And those trial close questions that we set up, we ask them because we're basically getting them to say yes, 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 yes. And then the last trial close question we ask, we say, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowners, now out of all of those other estimates that you've gotten, did any of those other companies talk to you about this stuff in detail? That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying create a proposal that you can completely destroy your competition without firing one shot or saying anything bad. That question right there is a absolute game changer when you present yourself like this. So we do our trial close questions. After we do our trial close questions, then we get into the work scope and the price proposal. So before I get into the work scope and the price proposal, I just wanted to see if anybody has any questions about what we just talked about in terms of how to create this, which, by the way that we created these PDFs is we went into Google Slides. We created this Google slide pitch, which you can do this in Google Slides. Mm-hmm. We use another tool called Engage that we use sometimes. So we basically everything we do in terms of things that are customer facing all follows this same exact framework and messaging.
While we wait for any questions that are coming in there, I have a question. When was it that you kind of decided to discover that this is the necessary way to start selling? And how was your first couple attempts with this?
The first company that I went to go do home service sales in, had been around forever. I mean, they were super established. And I mean, literally everybody knew the name of the company. I mean, you would to somebody and be like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. They're pretty expensive, right? Like, so they knew that if you called this company out, you weren't going to get a cheap job. You were going to get a good job, and people sort of knew what they were going to pay for. That company did a really good job at like establishing themselves in the community. Mm-hmm. So the sales were, I don't want to say they were easy, but they were easier because you always had that to fall back on. The next company that I went to work for didn't have that. And I was struggling a little bit in the beginning when I got there. And I went to this training. I actually went to a training in Las Vegas at a international kitchen and bath. And there was a company there called Case Remodeling. They're out of Washington, D.C. And the guy was talking about, and this was, 13 years ago, 14 ago, the guy was talking about how when they go into a house, they're one of the most expensive remodelers by far. But when they would go into the house, they had a visual presentation that they did with the homeowner, which were these little boards that they had put together with tile and paint and samples of the cabinet doors or whatever. And they were decent size. And what they did is they would go in and they would show these pictures on their process of how they mask the house off, how they like tarp everything, and how they like section off the house and all of that different stuff that they do. They had a photo presentation that they did. And then they showed the homeowners their good, better, best on these boards. And they had this like really great presentation that they walked the homeowner through. And he talked about like how pricing became a lot less relevant at that point, because now they were talking about how they're different from all the others. And the last piece that was really pretty critical for me was that they had a designer on staff. And so like their big selling point was that they weren't going to have to run to different stores and all this stuff and pick out samples and all that. They were just going to have that designer meet them in the home, make sure that and here's kind of the price point you're going to be at if you select these types of materials. I thought it was brilliant.
That's fantastic.
So I learned that. And then, with my prior job at working and doing sales and doing the promotions and presentations at the gyms and all that stuff, I figured out how to marry these things together. And I started doing a really generic version on PowerPoint. It was bad. My first one was awful. But I refined it over the years, and I found that like people were way more engaged. They were way more willing to spend money. And then I learned how to refine it to like pull out and take away the objections while I was doing the presentation. And then the last company I worked for, I built my own presentation and I was just murdering it. So when I started my company, that was the first thing I did was develop our presentation, our pitch, all of that stuff. And my guys just crush it.
Mm-hmm. And that's fantastic. That really kind of sets that stage apart. So doesn't look like there's any questions right yet, but let's keep on rocking.
Okay, let's get into the price proposal. Now, most people have heard of the good, better, best. And the good, better, best model is really good, except for in my perspective, it's backwards. It has to be best, better, good. The reason that we want to go best, better, good is because there's something called a mental anchor. And the mental anchor is, so you ever heard the comment, you only get one chance to make a first impression? That's kind of the mental model of a mental anchor. So what people see first that makes an impression, that's really what anchors them in, when they think about this. So that's one of the reasons why I always train my sales guys, never throw out a price even you might be close. Like I can look at a roof and be pretty close to the square count, right? But I will never throw out a price, even if they say, what do you think this is going to cost? Roughly. I'm not going to hold you to it. They're lying because they can't help but hold you to it, right? I mean, that's the first price they've heard from you, and that's what's going to stick.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to show the highest price first. From a sales strategy standpoint, the reason you want to show the highest price first is because if they object on price, now you have a drop down. All right. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we use that drop down. So I'm a really detailed work scope kind of person. And the reason I'm a detailed work scope kind of person is for a few different reasons. And this is another way you can set yourself apart from your competition. This is really easy to do in roofer, guys, like super simple. You just create a narrative underneath your line item. That's it. So we created a line item of removing existing roof covering. Estimated is based on, one layer, additional layers. Now, the other thing that this does for you is if you have to write a change order, you have an opportunity to write a change order because you've told them what this is covering and what the additional cost could be if you uncover whatever it is. And we do the same thing. And we also cover our butt a little bit in the labor narrative in our work scope. We talk about we can't be responsible for drywall nail pops, wall hung art, drywall cracking, framing issues, stuff like that. Issues arising outside of our control that we can't be responsible for. We do that because, and we want to have that conversation with the homeowner so that there's no expectation that if we get done with their roof and some of their drywall and their ceilings cracked, hey, listen, we covered that already, right? So it's a CYA. And then we just lay out everything we're going to do. People like that. Now, the other piece of this is when we lay out this work scope, we have an opportunity to talk to the homeowner about everything that we're going to do. All right. And everything that we're going to use on their roof. We talk about felt buster, underlayment, ice and water shield, starter strip, all of that. Because we use all of GAF's components, we're able to offer you this Golden Pledge warranty. This also covers any notarization, a wind mitigation inspection, and all your permitting. So when we finish presenting this, so we'll basically quickly go through line item by line item with the homeowners, right? And then we'll say, all right, and the cost to do your roof here is $22,054.16. Do you have any questions about what we're doing on your roof, or do you have any questions about the work scope? And they'll probably say no and say, okay, do you have any questions at all about what we're going to be doing on your roof or the company itself? Do you have any questions at all? They say no. Okay, great. Well, based on what you said to us earlier, seems like we're a perfect fit here. Let's go ahead and get you guys on the schedule. Right? Soft close. Mm-hmm. Now, this is where they're going to start to object. Say, well, this all seems really great. We got to think about it. Or, we have some other estimates coming and, all of that stuff. And then we have our objection rebuttals that we get to throw out there once they say they got to think about it and all that stuff. And you say, okay, I understand, and I'm not going to go through all of the objection rebuttals and all of that, but you can say, look, I understand. There's a lot to think about here. When I asked you if you had any questions about anything, you said no. And I feel like based on that comment that you guys need to think about it, I might not have done my job right and that you guys might have some outstanding questions. What did I miss? And, we know that it's price generally. And so they say, well, you didn't miss anything. You did a good job. And then you can say, well, help me out here. You said that we're a perfect fit. You said you liked everything about us. You don't have any questions about this. What's stopping you from doing business with me then? Is it my price? Now we can talk about price. I'm just going straight. I've heard a lot of other sales trainers dance around the issue, all this stuff. We need to get to price.
And that's
because we know that that's the only real objection.
That's the most common objection too. So when you're thinking that there's a bunch of other ones here and there, but really it comes down to price. So it's perfect to just diving right at it like this.
Yeah. So, you have to do the soft close. You have to, because they're all we've got to think about it is the most common stalling objection that you're going to get. I mean, by far, hands down. So, and we know that, we know it's not a real objection. So when they say, well, we've got to think about it, you say, okay, there's a few different ways to handle it, but that's how I usually handle it. All right. I'm just a little confused. When we talked about everything, I went through everything. You said you didn't have any questions about the work scope or the company, but yeah, you guys still have to think about it. I feel like I didn't do a good job, that you're still missing something and you still have questions. What did I miss?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what I'm doing is I'm giving them an opportunity to either throw out another objection or tell me its price, which generally they won't do. And then when they give me that other stalling or, whatever, it's not a real objection, then I can go right into and say, listen, I'm genuinely confused here, right? You told me you like us, you like our company, you read our reviews, you thought we're really great. You didn't have any questions about my work scope. What's stopping you from doing business with me today? Is it my price? Right? I mean, let's just get right out to it. And then they can say, yeah, well, you're a little bit higher than the other people. Okay, no problem. Then we go into, if price is the only issue, right? I'm sorry, I misunderstood. When we talked at your home, you said that you wanted, you were more interested in quality and warranties. And so that's why I showed you our best system with the best warranties. But we do have some other options for you. And then I'll go into the other two options. I'll go into the lower option here, right? And I say, this is a great system. The warranties are the biggest difference. I'll explain the difference in the warranty. So we have this system here. And then we also have our entry-level system, which most contractors are going to offer you. This is what most contractors are going to offer. This is what's going to fit right in with everybody else. Okay. And it's still a good system. Here's everything it includes. And here's the pricing on that. So out of these three systems, which one works best for you? And so when we do it that way, now we've taken away that price objection. We've taken away the stalling objections. And now we've asked for the business again. Mm-hmm. And here's typically where we start having a conversation about the differences, about, all of this stuff. And this is where we really get an opportunity to close them. Because now we've opened up the door to have a price discussion and figure out what we need to do to get them to buy from us. Now, all the bullshit's out of the way. All the stalling and, fluff objections are out of the way. Now we're talking turkey. They see that we have options that fit, that are right around what the other, it might be a little bit more, but we have some objection rebuttals about that and all that stuff. But this is how you present that proposal so that you've disqualified the people that they've spoken to before because nobody's been as detailed. Mm-hmm. And we've given them a bunch of different options that are relatively close in cost. And we've given them some options to choose from so they don't really have anywhere to go here. And because we know that they have a need, they're going to buy from somebody. So this is where the magic happens right here. And that's how we filter them down to get them into the place where the magic happens.
And what's really cool about this too is like when you have the summary page and you can see the prices right there, have a little summary about what's happening there. And they can say, okay, cool. So what was the System Plus again? Mm-hmm. Then you go into it real quick and then be like, just a reminder, the difference on these two options here. Great. There is this, but you can go directly into there and explain the differences that they're going to be having with the Golden Pledge that they won't have with the System Plus as well.
So that's why we did a warranty snapshot sheet, right? So, and it sits right underneath. So, when they're looking at this and they're like, okay, I have the Golden Pledge, I have the Systems Plus, and I have the Dynasty. The Dynasty is, roughly $4,000 cheaper than the Golden Pledge. And here's the other really key part to this, okay? Because now they get to see in relation to all of the other pricing, and it's easier for them to compare everything and make a buying decision. That is a critical part. And so we talk about the 4 buying frames, right? And one of the buying frames is comparing and contrasting. And that's one of the key things that people need to be able to do in order to make a buying decision. And so that having this laid out like this, so they can see the pricing relative to one another, and then we can talk about the differences relative to the, to the different systems and what the differences are, so they can really make a quick comparison, and we can go back and say which ones, now that you've got clarity on that, which of these works best for you. And I'm telling you, man, when you present your proposal like that, it's a game changer. You'll close way more.
Yeah.
So the other key thing that I wanted to say is, even if you are a restoration contractor, obviously you're not going to go through this pricing proposal, okay? But what you are going to do is you're going to bring your highest and best roof system, because generally what the insurance is going to pay, right? And we all know mostly that we can give people a really good system. And so what we might want to do is we might want to give them kind of like a basic system, and then we might want to give them an upgrade system as an incentive to sign with us. That, hey, listen, this is what most roofing contractors are going to offer you, right? They're going to offer you, this IKO system, okay? It's an okay system, but because I want your business, I want to earn your business, I'm going to give you this full GAF system, which is much better, has much better warranties, as an incentive, because I want to earn your business. And then your close can be the next steps, right? Which is filing the claim, signing the contingency, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how you would use that to close your inspection on the restoration side.
That's a huge point too. Having that conversation with them, being able to compare and contrast there. The other thing that I think that was really important that you just brought up there is that visualization of those actual numbers. It's the same thing when you're doing upgrade options, like upgrading to ridge vent or whatever. Having it done on paper is a way for people to not attempt to do mental math, because seeing $2,000 on a piece of paper difference is a lot better than picturing what $2,000 is.
It's huge, and it's really easy to do. So when they're looking at the price disparity, and you're looking at the difference of $2,000, you can tell the homeowner, look, let's look at this realistically. So we're $2,000 apart from whatever the other roofing company or whatever. They didn't go through any of this stuff with you in detail. They didn't talk to you about the people that are going to be in place. We did talk about like how many companies close or fail. We talk about all of those things. We're talking about, I forget what the numbers shake out to be, but we're talking about, let's say, $100 a year, or whatever. I think it's $100 a year. We're talking about $100 a year difference, which equates to $8 a month or whatever. Is your sanity and your security worth that or no?
Yeah.
Right.
Sanity is a great line to use there too. Like just talking about how much it weighs on your sanity once you have a leaking roof. Like it just, that's tied to that.
Yeah. So having those, so bringing those numbers, the best, better, good, bringing those numbers to them like that. And then the other thing, don't forget, we're always working under the assumption that the mental anchor is always that higher price. Mm-hmm. So the lower price, which is still a good system, is going to look super golden to them, even if they don't want that full, 25, 50-year warranty, whatever it is. That's okay. That next one still looks really good.
Exactly. That
Yep.
anchoring of the price makes a huge difference to contractors overall, and just being able to chat about it. I like whenever I was doing sales, I had a good, better, best, but I had it the opposite of what you have, the good, better, best. But I would always talk about the right one would be that higher price, and I would anchor it because then the conversation can be like, oh, okay, I understand that's a lot of money for you. We can go down to this, but you will be losing out on XYZ. And that's kind of, you're anchored on that price, you're anchored on the features, and then you can just open that up. So
Yeah, let's talk about that really quickly. So if you present, and I learned this mistake
Mhm.
years ago, because if you present that lower price first, okay, which most people do, they present, good, better, best, right? They present the lowest price first. If you present that lowest price first and they stop you dead in your tracks and you're talking about that lower priced option first, then you don't really have anywhere to go.
No.
If they say you're priced too high, right? Like you literally have nowhere to go. I mean, you're done. You're dead in the water. If you show them all three prices, boom, 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 you don't really get a chance to leverage the drop down technique when you're trying to close them.
Mhm.
And when you leverage that drop down technique, it actually makes them feel more comfortable that you're giving them other options that are lower priced because you've already established that you're a higher quality contractor, right? So there's just something mentally that happens to people when you can actually walk them down that process. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, most of what we sell are the higher price golden pledges.
Yeah. No, because you anchored them, you're explaining to them, and they see the value in it from the beginning. You're doing the trial closes and everything. It makes a big difference. And then for those out there who are only offering one option, really important stat. It was fascinating when I first learned this. It was at our Rise tour, which last stop is at right now in San Antonio with our boy Process Pete. But Bob Marsh, who's our keynote speaker there, had a slide up, and it blew my mind when I saw it. And it said that 97% of people will wait and stop if there's only one option provided for them. Even if they're fully confident in that one option, they
Yeah.
will hold on there. So having those different options and then being able to do the drop down like Corey's talking about is going to change your world if you're a single price or option guy.
Why will they stop, Nick? Why?
Because they can imagine there's different options available. And
They have nothing to compare it to.
Exactly.
And that's, again, that buying frame of compare and contrast is why it's so critical to understand those buying frames. I like that. I like the fact that he would talk about that, because that really demonstrates you need to give people options, right? And I think the last thing about creating a proposal like this is it really gives you the confidence that you've done everything you can to earn this customer's business.
Mm-hmm.
There are people out there, there are people out there that are just going to go for the absolute cheapest. But what I've found over the years is that with our process, with our 7 game-changing questions at the inspection, we can typically figure out who's just doesn't understand how to buy this service because they never have, and price is the only thing that they really know. And so they say like, yeah, I'm looking for the best price or whatever. And we have some follow-up questions that we ask if somebody does say that. But if you figure out that maybe they just haven't had a different vantage point, then when you go through this with them, now they have more information, they have a better vantage point, and they're going to be less likely to price shop.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the other piece of this.
You really want to lock them in, and that's what's cool about your entire process. If we go back to that first session that we did, which was, I guess, 4 weeks ago now, when we talk about that in the proper intake process there, that's what's so important with your system, to make sure that you have the right person, their price, condition, they're qualified, they understand what's happening, and you are getting them in last, and you're making sure that you have both decision makers there. All of these points make
Yep.
it super, super foolproof. And again, going back to the beginning of this call, it's why you have to bring this all together. If you're doing the system, it has to be an all or nothing thing.
There's a sales trainer that I respect. I think he's got good sales training. I do. And he says that you do not want to be the last guy in the house because one of my reps will sell the job from under you. Here's my counter to that. If you set up your company and your rep the way that I outline in my intake process, I guarantee you that they will wait for you.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. And so, like, I teach my guys to be one of the last in the house all the time. And one of the reasons why I want them to be last is because we always hit them with this question. And this is free. So, make sure you listen to this. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homer, you guys have had some other estimates already, right? And they're like, yeah, of course. And you say, so you basically know what this project's going to cost, right? Yes. Okay, so because you know basically what this project's going to cost, what are you hoping to gain by getting multiple estimates? Boom. You obviously have to be able to do it. That came off kind of scripted and stuff, but you have to be able to do it in a conversation.
Yeah.
When you talk to them about that, say, look, I understand you got multiple estimates. I mean, that makes sense. Most people do. So you basically know what this project's going to cost, right? Yes. Okay. So all those estimates, you have all these estimates, you know what it's going to cost. What are you hoping to gain by having all of those different estimates? And what I'm trying to do is call out that shopping on price is a really shitty way to choose a contractor. And that's how we really start to have that conversation about everything else that they need in order to be able to make a good decision.
It's a great way to tie back to, like, what are they looking for in a contractor, and have they worked for a contractor? You can go back again and it pulls in those pain points. And then you can say, hey, Mrs. Jones, like, I have told you that, you've told me all the issues that you've had with contractors and showed you how we are going to be the opposite of that. And you're looking for options still. Are you going to be looking for options after me? Well, I think I solve everything that you need. So bang, bang, boom, you got that.
Yep. We have a training class coming up. It's a full day training. You get a full SOP manual for sales department training, tracking, measuring, how to literally set up your sales department. I mean, everything you could possibly need to set your sales department up from a structure and process standpoint. We're going to be teaching you, and you will get that full written out SOP. That's coming up December 5th. If you want to take that class, email me, Corey at ssrflorida.com, and I'll get you the link to register. I've got a free ebook that talks about what the class will cover, so you can take a look and see what we have. And then if you want me to help you develop your proposal, we've got a really great pitch deck that we have developed that we can brand out for your company. And then I can help you develop out your script and your value selling propositions and everything, so you have a really outstanding presentation and proposal in the home, and how to use that presentation and proposal so that you can just smash your competition.
Exactly. And everyone who's watching, Corey has done this over and over again. We've talked about it from the beginning. He has created an 8-figure business doing only retail in a storm market.
In 3 years.
In 3 years. So this is the kind of guy that you're going to want on your side. So do not hesitate to reach out. He's also a pretty good guy too,
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So come see me and Corey and the rest of the roofer team as well down at RoofCon coming up next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. If you're watching this later, hopefully you were there because it's going to be great. And then December 5th, make sure that you join that live training with Corey. You can reach out to him at Corey@ssrflorida.com or Corey Combs on the Facebook.
On the Facebook.
Awesome.
All right, man. We're about to end this thing. So I'll talk to you soon, my friend. Thank you very much.